Parshas Masei begins with the travels of Klal Yisrael through the desert, all the places they went by, the places they stayed, moved on. And Rashi explains that this is at the end of the 40 years. Where Hashem is sort of reminiscing. Talking about, remember this, remember this. You get the mashal. The king traveled with his son, and he says, here you weren't feeling well, and here you got better. Here it was hot, here it was cold. What's so interesting is that many of these masos, these stations where Klal Yisrael were not mentioned the first time. It's only now, at the very end of it, that we get all the details, exactly which spots there were in the desert that the Jews went through, stopped, stayed over. As if when it really happened, it was less significant. It's only in hindsight that everything is so meaningful. In Rashi's mashal, we understand it very well. At the time, you deal with the daily crises. When you review it, it becomes part of this whole big story of a journey. And that's where the king, reliving it this time, expresses his feelings for what it was like and what it means to him today. The Jewish nation has been through a long journey. We've been in Golus for a very long time. Far longer than we were in our own land. Far longer than the days that we had our Beis HaMikdash, both of them together. Living it at the time, of course, the trials, the challenges, the suffering. The question is understanding it in hindsight. Now, it's not over with. We're back home, but we're not back home. We're back here. Far better than being at the mercy of our unwelcoming hosts. We still haven't arrived at the point where the Jewish nation has the Beis HaMikdash as its center. Open miracles, total clarity as to what we live for. A relationship with Hashem that could almost touch. But we're far enough along where we can do some form of reminiscing. very much like the king and his son. What really stands out is what the Jewish nation has endured. And how, for most of that history, we remain faithful, come what may. And then where we are today. So many generations of discrimination, inquisitions, the Crusades, pogroms. The Jews stayed faithful. They gave their lives for what we believe in. We studied, we taught, we wrote under the worst of circumstances. In the darkest days, we were at our best. Even as late as the Holocaust. So many of those who went to their deaths in the hands of the Nazis went knowing where they were going, accepting. Some sung, Aleinu l'shabeach. We're better off being us than them. A common exclamation was, nobody would want to change places with the oppressors. Ani Mamin, knowing that this was the will of Hashem, and that despite what was going on, the Jewish nation would survive. For so many, these darkest moments were the finest. And looking back at Golus, we see how the Jewish nation expressed its love for Hashem, understood that Hashem unconditionally loves us, although we don't understand. We don't understand at the time what He's got in mind. And as much as we want to understand and await an explanation someday, our allegiance is not conditional on hearing that answer, because He's Hashem, and we're confident that He only loves us. The problem is recent Jewish history. Where after everything we endured, with all the sacrifices we made, as we get closer to the finish line, so many have given up. The tragedy is that after all of these years, after a long history, the greatness that the Jewish people assumed, that which we developed, Not only in spite of, but because of all the oppression. To so many, that's disappeared. We got to make it to the finish line. We got to get there and get there quickly. We've got to remind Klal Yisrael of all the years of sacrifice and that unshakable emunah and unshakable pride that certainly was not in vain. We must again assume that greatness, that pride. This is not the time to abandon ship. We're almost there. That's up to us. In these days, where we mourn the Churban, the destruction of Yerushalayim, we mourn the Golus. We remember what it's been like. We have to remember the Mesiras Nefesh, the endless sacrifice, and the greatness of the Jew under the worst of circumstances. We have to remind our brethren of it. Too much of Jewish history is taught as tragic, to the point that people would prefer abandoning it. When we talk of suffering, when we study the Churban, make sure you don't miss the most important part, which is the greatness of the Jew through all of the suffering, the closeness we felt to Hashem, the acceptance. We were superhuman. Jews in the camps that secretly put on tefillin. Jews that went to the gas chambers singing Anim Amen. We have to remember the closeness. Yes, it's been a long, painful journey, but it brought us so much closer. This has to be the message. This has to be the message that we share. All of that suffering has made us even more proud, more strong and more proud, and did bring us closer to Hashem. Not the opposite. It wasn't sheep to the slaughter. It was with sacrifice. It was serving Hashem and lovingly accepting the decree. That's greatness. These are the lessons we have to learn. And this is what we have to share. So that all of Klal Yisrael makes it to the finish line. So that all of our brethren will be there for that happy ending. The Geula Shalema, the Mehira V'Yameinu.